In time, historians will settle on a name for the ongoing sectarian massacre on the Syrian coast. But tonight, we will focus on the names and faces of those killed so far, according to their loved ones. The number of innocents gone down will end up being in the hundreds at least, but we're focusing on this town, Baniyas, where some of the worst of the killing is taking place. And first, on one family. Yesterday morning, a group of fighters came to the Sadek family home. They are Alawite and known to have been opposed to Assad's regime. This is Faraz Sadek's last social media post. That sentiment didn't save them. According to their family, the fighters murdered mother Sahir Abdullah Sakhim and brothers Faraz and Faraz Sadek because they were Alawite. Today, their sister Rasha spoke to us.
أنا كنت معارضة، أمي كانت معارضة، إخواتي كانوا عم بيداروا شغلهم، ما عم حسب شهادة بيت خالي يسألون أنت علوي ولا سني.
She went on to say that the bodies of her mother and two brothers are still in their home. Rasha can't reach them. After an offensive by former Assad regime soldiers was put down on Thursday by the new interim government security forces, Sunni fighters not aligned to Damascus, according to the government, then entered those Alawite areas and started killing civilians. This video, for example, shows a fighter roaming the streets with others. We can't show you what ends up happening here. Suffice to say, they are shooting people for sport. In a speech last night, President Ahmed al-Shara denounced the sectarian killings and said that those who took part in it would be brought to justice.
وسيحاسب حسابا شديدا كل من يتجاوز على المدنيين العزل ويأخذ أقواما بجريرة أقوام.
There's a lot of bloodshed to be held accountable for. This is Dr. Bassam Suba, his wife, Dr. Ruba al-Sheikh, and their sons, Haidara and Ward. Ruba's niece Hala told us that official government forces came to their house yesterday morning and then left. A couple of hours later, a group of fighters arrived and killed everyone inside the house.
نحن فقدنا التواصل معهم تقريبا الساعة 1 الظهر. صرنا عم نحاول نتصل فيهم نبعث لهم ما في أي رد. ساعة 2 أحد جيرانهم اللي بالبناية اللي مقابلهم بيجي على البناية بيخبرنا إنه هنن مقتولين برصاص بالبيت بالكوريدور وبالصالون.
There continues to be clashes between government and pro-Assad forces along the coast. This video shows the bodies of 2 soldiers after an ambush in Baniyas. The death toll of militants, though, will be dwarfed by that of civilians. People like Faraz Sadek loved spending time with his nieces and nephews, a family now struggling to come up for air.
The Syrian monitoring group says more than 400 civilians from the Alawite minority have been killed by pro-government militia forces and their supporters. The pro-government militia are accused of storming villages in Tartus and Latakia and carrying out revenge killings, as well as looting homes and setting them on fire. The town of Baniyas was one of the worst hit. Over 200 fighters on both sides are also said to have been killed in these clashes. Well, joining me now is Dr. Reem Tukmani, who is the Syria Research Director at the London School of Economics. Thanks very much for being with us. This at first looked like a one-off. We now have 3 days of these concerted clashes, whatever the involvement of official government forces may be. This is serious, isn't it?
This is very serious, and it doesn't look like the new government has any way of kind of stopping these ongoing massacres. The number continue to go up. I mean, the last figure I heard from activists on the ground, we're waiting for it to be confirmed, is nearing 2,000s, because we're just finding out today about the massacres who were committed yesterday in villages that were very difficult to access. This is like spreading like a fire. And
well, you seem to have actually answered the next question I was going to ask there. I was going to ask you, is the government unwilling in Damascus to stop this or unable?
They are willing, but they're unable. The situation where from day one, beyond their control, they pretended that they control all the brigades. They invited for a big victory conference in Damascus a few weeks ago, saying all the brigades now been dissolved and everything under their control. In reality, it's not. Many of the brigades who are committing the massacres, they're not originally part of SGS. They're part of other groups. But now, according to the government, they are in charge. So they have to be able to control them, but they don't seem to be able to. Also, they called many civilians to join the fight. So there was a popular call for people from all backgrounds to join in. And just people felt free to go into all these villages and commit massacres.
And it does seem on the face of this that we are, and you hesitate even to say this, dragging back into the old sectarian ways, the score settling, as we mentioned earlier. Is that your take on this?
It is, sadly it is. I mean, the regime built its power based on the grievances of the minorities, and now they're paying the price of it. But look, I was in Syria not a long time ago, and I spoke to so many people from Alawite background, and I didn't see one loyalist anymore. No one is sorry that the regime is gone. No one. And we have to remember, if the Alawite...
Even in Latakia, even in Tartus...
I'll tell you something. If the loyalists, if the Alawites did not decide not to defend the regime would not have fallen. The reason Syria was taken over so quickly is that the Alawite decided, we're not going to fight for you. We have to remember this. But they've been completely excluded, thrown out of the army, out of everything else. The army was dissolved. All the mistakes committed in Iraq were committed again in Syria, dissolving the army, debathifcation, excluding minority, no transitional justice, while building new security forces that are sectarian by design. So the minorities felt excluded, and now they're hitting back. The heads of these armed resistance could be ex-loyalists, could be criminal, but the base is a very frustrated community.
Indeed, noting all that frustration that you outlined very clearly there. Nonetheless, you have to have a certain number of people and a degree of organisation to hit back. You've got to have the wherewithal, the communications. You've got to have the arms, and it's happening.
They've been organising for a while. I wrote to this government and to many other governments 3 months ago, back in December, saying this is going to happen. We saw this happening. We knew it's going to happen. Unless certain steps are taken, policies are changing, this is going to happen. And still, people went to Damascus, shook hands with al-Jolani, gave him the international legitimacy he was so desperate to get in order to continue and commit these crimes. And it's going to be very difficult for him, I think, to move away from all of this.
So briefly, what can Damascus... It would seem fairly easy. These seem a fairly small number of people in a very defined geographical area, up in the northwest, in Latakia and so forth. It would seem a fairly simple thing for the government to send regular forces and deal with it.
No, it's not, because you have to understand the geography. The coastal one is very different. It's coastal mountains. These guys, they have their villages up in the mountain. They are a minority, and minorities often climb up the mountain for protection. So the geography is on their side. They master this geography. They know all the, the roads, where to hide. It's their own villages.